Let's go to chapter 24. We're going to be talking about oratorio and concentrating on the famous composer Handel. All right, so we talked about opera in the last unit, or excuse me, in the last chapter. Oratorio is somewhat similar to opera in that it's a large vocal drama, um, dramatic for solo voices, chorus, orchestra. There are some major differences, though, between opera and oratorio. One of the main differences is oratorio is for sacred texts or sacred stories, all right? Not mythology, not some of the other stories that would have been common for operas to be built around, but oratorio was strictly on sacred stories. The other main difference is that it was performed without costumes and without scenery. So it was more like a concert rather than a full play. A lot of similarities to opera in that it has recitatives, arias, duets, trios, choruses. In fact, the chorus plays a pretty major role in oratorio. But the libretto would be by religious leaders and it would be a biblical story. Early oratorios were actually sponsored by the Catholic Church, and this was considered to be a message of faith for wide audiences, churchgoers. And one of the things that they actually thought was that this could be a moral alternative to the more sensuous opera. During Lent, particularly when a time of abstaining from worldly things was encouraged within the Catholic Church, the um, the churchgoers were encouraged not to do things like attending opera. And so going to an oratorio would satisfy some of that entertainment need, but it would be acceptable as a religious alternative. The composer that is most well known for his oratorios is George Friedrich Handel, born in 1685, died in 1759. He actually was a German composer. He was a director and a producer as well, but he worked in Italy, where he really learned the Italian style, worked in Germany, and then took his styles to England. So he wrote, directed, and produced very Italian style opera, but started the Royal Academy of Music in England in 1720. The English loved him, so much so that you can still see where he's buried in Westminster Abbey in London. His style was using lots of rich melodies, dramatic expression, which you'll get to hear in one of the examples, and having a strong rhythmic drive. There's a picture of him. He wrote a lot of Italian operas, about 40 of them. He also wrote a lot of English oratorios. Also orchestral suites, concertos, keyboard, and chamber music. So basically, Handel was the one who is given the name of the inventor of the oratorio. He took this Italian opera style, took the Catholic oratorio, and combined it and created this grand choral style known as the English oratorio. The poems or the libretto didn't have to be from religious leaders, though. It could be from poets. And so that was a little deterrence away from the church. This had more of a entertainment value rather than a spiritual value because they weren't sponsored by the church, these English oratorios. It had a lot to do with the storylines about having a chosen people, which was really appealing during the economic expansion that was happening, especially with the colonies. If you look at the dates around, right around late 1600s and early first half of the 1700s. There was also an increased interest in choral singing. Solo singing was such a big deal, but people really started to be interested in choral singing. Here is a picture of, oh, sorry, not there. There's a picture of Westminster Abbey. And this was for one of Handel's performances. Um, it was on the anniversary of his birth. So look at all the people you can see. This was quite a grand experience. If you've ever seen the Westminster Abbey, it's beautiful. Um, the spires and the ceiling, the acoustics are pretty amazing. The piece that we're going to look at is called The Messiah. I know you've heard it. You've for sure heard it around Christmas time. In fact, it is probably one of the most famously quoted songs of all time, or musical pieces of all time. The Hallelujah Chorus, that is, which is from The Messiah. He composed this work in 24 days, and its first performance was actually in Dublin. It was performed continuously ever since its premiere, and that's really the only piece that's ever been done like that. It's never not been performed since its induction. The libretto comes from the Old and New Testaments. They are verses out of the Bible. A lot of times you'll hear this music at Christmas because there's a portion of it that's the prophecy of the coming of Christ or the birth of Christ. So that's very famous during Christmas. There's also a famous section that is typically done around Easter because it's talking about the suffering, death, and the resurrection of the Christ. And then there's a redemption section, which talks about how Christ redeemed the world through faith. There are a few pieces you're going to listen to from that. One is an aria, a da capo aria, which I want to talk to you about in just a second, called Rejoice Greatly, O Daughter of Zion. And then the other one is going to be the famous, sorry, I'm going to get to there, the Hallelujah Chorus. Okay, so that'll be the second piece you're listening to. Let me go back here. This was written in 1742, and a da capo aria means to the top, da capo, to the head or to the top. What that means is you're going to have an A section of music. Okay, then you're going to have a B section. B section just simply means contrasting section of music. And then da capo would be written actually at the end of that A section, or excuse me, at the B section, and that would mean return to the top, return to the head. So the A section would then be repeated. However, the A section would be repeated. I don't know if you can see right here, this little indication. That tells us that there's going to be A repeated with differences. It's not going to be an exact repeat. Now, what would happen during this time is that would be the soloist's chance to show off the virtuosity. So you're going to hear a lot of vocal runs and expression in the vocal lines with that repeated A section. So it would be presented a little more straight in the first section. Then you'd have a contrasting B section, and then that repeat would be a lot more flourishing. You're going to hear a lot of melismatic passages in the term rejoice, lots of notes to one syllable. Okay, here's the listening guides for you. I want you to see if you can hear the changes from the A, B, and A section in this Rejoice Greatly. Remember, this is going to be in English. It'll open with an instrumental ritornello. That means just the orchestra playing, but you'll hear the vocal theme in the violins. Then you're going to hear the A section, an instrumental ritornello, the B section, and then the repeat of the A section. Listen for some of those melodic elaborations. And then you're going to hear the Hallelujah Chorus. Very famous. I know you've heard it before, but this time I want you to specifically listen to the changes in different textures. Imitative polyphony, homophony. We've got lots of switching between polyphony or imitative polyphony and homophony where they're all singing together. So let's see if you can pick those out as you listen to them. It's for four-part chorus and orchestra, and lots of dramatic effects with very dynamics. So take a listen and see what you think. Thank you.